Empty. 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 Yeah, we're live. It's 10, 11. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, all of that. How's everybody doing? Today will be fun because we're going to talk about something we don't normally talk about, and that is Dodge Magnum. I did some testing way back, and I'm going to get on some more because the Magnum is still there, even though it has been piston flipped, which did nothing for power. But we're going to put it back together and then run, different cams in a couple different cams probably, but definitely run. I at least want to run a turbo on it. But right now, for today, what we want to talk about for the Dodge Magnum stuff is we want to talk about intake manifolds. I did a video on this, and we did testing with the guys from Engine Masters way back when we did the piston flip thing. We also did some other stuff. We did the UT Awesome, which those guys are great to work with. I still have one of their cams that we're going to put in there, and now I have springs for it, so we can make all that work. But we want to try a different camshaft in it, and then we want to try. I tried the UT Awesome intake manifold. They're modified KEGGER basically. And we ran that, and that worked good. That did add some power, but honestly, the thing that made the biggest power gain on that upgrade was the bigger throttle body that they sent. They do a 3D printed throttle body that replaces the factory Magnum one, and it's very cool looking. We were trying to figure out what it was. We're like, how did they do this? And then they told us, yeah, it was 3D printed. So it's pretty cool. But that worked out really good. So it did need more airflow going into it. So bigger throttle body stuff definitely is a good idea on that particular application. And they did modifications as a KEGGER, and then it picked up power. But honestly, and then we also ran a single plane on it. And the single plane was almost as good as the KEGGER down low. And I think we started 2,700 RPM. So the single plane was a little bit below the KEGGER, but honestly, not by very much. Not normally what we see. That was the M111 or something intake manifold. M1. It was the M1 intake manifold. So that single plane that GM sells or that Dodge sells. And then it was better going up through the curve, certainly better than the stock one. And then at the top, from about 4,500 on up, better than the UT Awesome version. But far and away, the best intake manifold that we ran on there was the Edelbrock Performer dual plane. And that worked very well. And one of the things that we did was we ran that manifold, and that manifold was better than all the manifolds everywhere. With below 3,200, it was a little below the modified KEGGER that UT Awesome did, but everywhere else up to 5,500 or so is where we ran this thing. It was up a lot in looking at the relative gains from the other intake manifolds. It was a lot better it made more power than the single plane out at 5,500, and that was past the horsepower peak for this mild cam thing. This had like a 212 camshaft in it. So it was past where this thing was making peak power anyway, quite a bit past it. And the dual plane just was the right choice for this combination of displacement and RPM and all that stuff. And it worked out really well. But one of the things that we did was we tried a couple of different spacers on this thing when we were running the testing. So run this 360 run with this small camshaft. This camshaft was a 264R-14 Magnum. It was 480 lift, 212, 218, and 114. And then we ran a Performer RPM air gap with a 750 Holly. We first ran it with no spacer, and it made 361 horsepower and 423 foot-pounds. And then what we did was we tried two different spacers on it. One was a 4-hole spacer, and one was an open spacer. And so with the 4-hole spacer, did very little. I mean, it changed it, it wiggled it 1 or 2 here and there at different spots, but nothing really dramatic, like nothing that we would say, yeah, I would definitely, I wouldn't buy a spacer for what it did, in 1 or 2 horsepower variances, and, some of that could be run to run. It didn't do very much. The open spacer did make a change in power. The open spacer actually made a little bit more peak, made 365 horsepower. It was better than the non-spacer version from 4,900 out, but not by a ton. The biggest amount was at 5,200, and we had 358 versus 365, so 7 horsepower there. The problem is below that, below 4,800 RPM, it was down a good bit compared to the non-spacer combination. And this is not at all unusual. When we do an open spacer on a dual plane, in fact, I would argue more often than not, we see a drop in low speed power. We see exactly what this one's doing. We see a drop in low speed power, and then it does pick up power at the top. And that's because it changes fundamentally what's going on with the intake manifold. We get more power on top, it can breathe through both barrels and stuff, and you could argue that it has a more breathing potential if that side of the motor was indeed being restricted. But we see this. There's sometimes we pick up a little power on the top with an open spacer, but we usually trade power down low. And in this case, it traded power from 2,700 all the way up to 4,700 RPM. So it's down through most of the curve. And so it was honestly not a change that I would make unless I had a 4,800 RPM stall converter on a 5,500 RPM motor, which obviously is also not going to be a good idea. But it shows what's going on with spacers. So I like doing testing like that, and I like doing other guys' Magnum stuff too, which I want to do some more of. We definitely want to put, I want to run that UT Awesome camshaft in it, and then also we want to run a turbo. So our turbo blowing into the KEGGER manifold, even though that's not a good manifold. The dual plane obviously is way better. It's definitely the way to go. And especially if you start looking at even more performance, if you start putting more camshaft in it, this thing's going to be skewed way more toward the carbureted intake compared to that EFI intake manifold. And I don't know, somebody had asked me yesterday or the day before if anybody made like a replacement EFI intake manifold for that. I thought that somebody did an EFI fuel injection like dual plane intake manifold for that. So that might be available. But other than that, like we see when we are doing the testing and the discussion on all of the tune port manifolds for small block Chevys, or even fast in the various manifolds for LS stuff, there's a lot of manifolds available for some of those applications, but we don't see that for the Magnum. Now, I don't know if that's the Dodge guys don't get any love, or the Pontiac guys or the Buick guys or whatever. All of the other guys, they don't get any love. And so there's not, 15 or 20 different intake combinations for those. I don't know how well that would sell if somebody did it. Quite honestly, I think the one thing I would say about an intake manifold for that application is it would be really easy to make a lot more power. It would be really easy to better that KEGGER manifold and make a lot more power. I know that with an intake change, you could get 30 or 40 horsepower from that combination. And it would be really easy to do. So I'm surprised that somebody hasn't done that. And particularly, like I said, if you have that motor and you want to put something on and you want to keep it fuel injected, a fuel injected single plane in none of these things is going to be a good choice until we run lots more camshaft and lots more cylinder head. But even a semi-long runner manifold from an EFI standpoint, like the dual plane is, would be a really, really good choice. And you could make a lot more power. And as we saw on the RPM air gap, you can make a lot more power everywhere, even down low, without trading that. So it's not like I'm losing 30 foot-pounds at 2,500 or whatever, and then gaining it all at the top. That's not what that manifold's doing. That's what I'm saying is that KEGGER manifold can be improved upon a lot without sacrificing very much or any at all, I think, with the right intake manifold. I think it'd be kind of cool to do a custom Super Richie manifold for a Magnum. That would be, even if you just did a longer runner high ram or something like that. Or you could do, a cool Super Richie dual plenum cross ram and make the runner lengths as long as you wanted and have all the fun doing that too. That certainly would be possible. And you could obviously make a lot more power doing that. It's just a custom manifold to replace a KEGGER manifold that nobody wants to spend any money on anyways. I just don't know if that's viable in the marketplace. But from a performance standpoint, definitely would be possible to make like lots more power. And, you know, this Magnum, I haven't done as much testing on those as I want to. Like I want to try different cylinder heads and different intake manifolds, certainly boost on it. We know that if we add boost, you know, a turbo, let's say, to this Magnum, that it's going to be doing. This is something I want you guys to let me know in the comments. I was thinking about this today before we got on to do this live feed. If we take a motor that we haven't run boost on, lots of guys want me to run boost on the Magnum, and I will. We're going to run a turbo on it. And if we do that, even already knowing what it's going to do, so we have a 300 horsepower Magnum motor and we add boost to it, we know what it's going to do. We know that if we do it right at, you know, at 7.5 pounds, it's going to add 50%. I can almost draw you the curve at what it's going to look like, assuming that we had consistent boost curve, which we could make it do that. But let me know in the comments, do people want to see that anyway? Do they want to see the actual run rather than, even though they know what it's going to do? It's more important to actually like see the dyno results and see the test and see the video and all that. It's much more fun to see that stuff and to see the actual data. You know, even though it's like watching a movie, we know the results. I still watch replacements 100 times. I still watch League of Their Own, or not League of Their Own, Major League way more. League of Their Own is awesome, but Major League is one that I watch over and over and over again. All of those are, you know, Tremors, all the Tremors movies. That's good stuff. Good stuff. So we got a poll going. Man, I gotta get my caps in there. We're gonna do it this way. Okay, here's the question. Excuse me, would a smaller 318 Magnum respond differently to boost than the larger 360 Magnum? Boom. And we're up and running. Because you know, the 318, you know, short stroke or short bore, I don't even know what the difference is on a 318, but whatever that is, it's different and it's a much better motor in every single way, except for making power. There's nothing even in there. There's just air. Is it a D-stroke 360 or is it a D-board, or are both of them different? Somebody let me know. I don't even recall what the bore and stroke. But luckily for me, I have a magic box where we can. The 360 has a larger stroke and produces more torque than the 318 Magnum. Yes. Mopar parts restoration. Here we go. That doesn't help me at all. That does nothing for me. You are not helping. 318 has a bore of 391, a stroke of 331. Scrolling. 391, 331. Gotta see more now. Okay, I don't need all that. I just need this bore and stroke, man. Live stream. We're live. It's all the way live. Scottish Eric, Sean, Jordan, what's up? Good afternoon. It's so sad Dodge will be Plymouth soon. Are they changing the name? Why is that sad? It's going to be the same thing, right? Richard, hope you're staying warm. Yeah, it's not cold. Like yesterday, I went, I took the puppies for a run. We went up and ran hills, and I was in shorts and short sleeve shirt. It was sunny out. It was nice. I mean, it's cold-ish for, you know, it's probably was in the 50s or whatever. So it wasn't, but the sun was out, and, you know, we were hot by the time we were done. So it was like I said, you know, shorts and running shoes and short sleeve shirts and just out, just, you know, doing that California thing. And everybody else is all freezing. I saw Brian was saying that they're all iced up and snowed in and stuff back in Kentucky, and the UPS guys were not picking stuff up. We're up to 15 in Iowa. Yeah, that's cold. Does going to a carb on a Magnum benefit over trying to keep the port injection? I know there's more intakes for the carb versions. It does, as I showed in this case. The RPM air gap was better everywhere than the Magnum is, except maybe way down low, and you wouldn't. And even there, it's not too much of a difference. JPL, what's going on? Is your 3800 running, JPL? Aftermarket EFI intakes do exist, but they're few and far between. I just bought a huge fuel injection air gap. That's the one I was thinking of, Redline. Yeah. For mine, the Holley EFI, it runs pretty good. I'm considering the UT Awesome throttle body. I just have the stock one right now. Are you using, so you're talking about using the stock throttle body on the air gap then? And the air gap style EFI manifold? I fixed the plenum leak on my wife's 99 Dakota. While I was in there, I cut the intake runners down at an angle. Scrolling. Cut the intake runners down at an angle following UTA performance. The results are fantastic. Yeah, if you shorten the runner length, they can do that. It can help. Sean, you want to see B1 heads? Yeah, I don't have any of those. I have a 2000 Durango with a 360 setting in the back. I want to turn it into a toy. Very interested in seeing this stuff. So you guys can answer me in the comments. If we have a 300 horsepower Magnum 360, let's say, it could be a 318, it doesn't matter, and we add, you know, 7.5 pounds of boost, how much power are we going to have? Kevin Bacon ordered a Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris. 318 was internally balanced. It'll do the same thing every other motor does, just be down on power due to the smaller displacement. I know, but what if you de-stroke it though? Those de-stroke motors like to rev. 360 is 4x358. So it's the same as a small block Chevy then. 318 is 391 versus 331. So they changed both of them. Wow. Microphone chatter. Small bore 340. I think the crank journals are bigger on the 360. I want to see how a Dodge Magnum V10 responds to boost. The slow compression and really long runners. It responds the same way as everything else. Boost just multiplies what's there. So if it has that to start out with, it just has more of that now. What's a good break-in process for a fresh engine? Mine, as I've mentioned before, is a 5.3 turbo. I'm working on it. Going to the machinist to get refreshed with forged internals. We have on the Dyno, we have a break-in procedure that we use. So it's computer controlled. We run it. It varies the load and RPM. We vary it like from 2,500 to 3,500. And what that does is it puts more load on it to bring it down to the lower RPM. So the torque load goes up. I don't like to see it much over 100 down at the 2,500 number. And then it could be down around 40 or so for the 3,500 number. And it just cycles through that. And we can have it hold it at any one of those RPMs for a certain period of time. And then we can program in the number of cycles that it does. And we can do multiples of those for a given period of time. We usually do 2 of those for like 10 or 12 minutes each. And then after that, we would let the oil cool down and we could start running. I think torque curves would be slightly different due to the stroke difference. Is the L7 lifter good lifters? Yeah, Redline, the power curves between a 318 and a 360 are definitely going to be different. just in stock trim. New cam lifters have been down this road, so what would you recommend for a break-in process? Yep, yeah, we went through that. Jordan sounds like a card in the spokes. I want to run a single plane on my big block, even though they only have a 236 at 50 cam. The single plane just looks way cooler. Yep, and on a big block, you get the crossover single plane versus dual plane a little bit earlier because of the displacement than like a small block. The smaller intake should cause quicker boost and ultimately restricting big boost numbers. What smaller intake are you talking about, Scottish? Stock throttle body is being used right now on the Hughes air gap. It has a square bore flange, but they sell a spacer that allows you to, it goes from that stock throttle body to a 4150 flange, right? I think I've seen that. Yes, sir. In the remote tuning stage now, logging ascending to ZZP, weather permitting right now. Yeah, I'm just curious how it's running. Are you going to be taking it to the dyno, JPL? You know what a Ritter block is? I don't know what that is. Took a couple of rides a few weeks ago. Very exciting. Chuck truck. Like the Tremors movies? Yeah. Those are good. Also, what does I hear about folks of soaking lifters overnight? You can. I don't normally do them overnight, but I do put them in oil. And I just look and make sure that there's no more bubbles coming out of them. You can wiggle it around. Like we do it in a big stainless salad bowl kind of thing. The famous one from the air cleaner videos that the guys from Engine Masters did. I've read that in stock form, the 5.2 has a different cam than the 5.9. Wonder how much the difference that plays. I don't know. We'd have to look at the specs and see what they changed for it and see what it does. We know that given the same specs, just like when we compare a 4.8 and a 5.3 and a 6.0, that the smaller motor is going to make peak power at a slightly higher RPM because it's effectively has better stuff on it relative to its displacement. So the camshaft is a little bit wilder on the smaller motor, and then the heads flow a little bit better on the displacement because they don't change, but the amount that you're asking it to flow has changed. Hughes claims on their site it makes the most power, and I'm planning on running boost with it, but I'm concerned since it's a dual plane as far as fuel distribution on M1 may be more suitable. You don't have to worry about Redline. Are you talking about the dual plane intake manifold? If it's port injected, you don't have to really worry about fuel distribution because you can control that with the computer. You would worry more about airflow distribution and that they would get a different amount of air through each port. I've heard it's the same duration, but higher lift. Yeah, lift is not going to greatly affect it. So the duration change would be more of an effect than lift would be. I think guys would want to see a 5.2 Magnum tested also, right? I'll put that. We'll do that poll at the halfway point. And so if we look at the dyno results, yeah, this is like where did we go with this? What did we make when this was stock? Not stock, but stock KEGGER manifold. Yeah, the stock KEGGER manifold was only 327 horsepower. So if we do our math, which I have a stock KEGGER manifold, 327 times 1.5. So we should make 490 horsepower, and in which case we'd have to turn the boost up at least just a little bit so that it went over 500 horsepower. Because otherwise, why would you do just 500 horsepower? I mean, why would you do 490 when you could do 500, right? So this was rated, the factory one was rated at 230 horsepower. Okay. It's right for ability and modifiability up to 250 horsepower. 230 to 260 horsepower. So 250-ish, it will go to 250. JPL, what, you have your intercooler on there and you have the ported heads, right? And then what, how much booster are you running? What pulley are you running? Is it, and is the blower ported? Hughes claims on their site it makes the most power. I'm planning on running boost with it, but I'm a little concerned. Okay. That makes more sense, but I did see where you could add fuel to each cylinder, but I don't know how I would figure that out. Definitely don't want to put in a port in each pipe on the header. Are you running that red line with an aftermarket ECU, or are you running the factory ECU? If you're running the factory ECU, I don't know if you can do individual cylinder trims with a factory ECU, but on all the Hollies and all of those, you can do it. I don't know why I assumed that you would be running something other than the factory ECU, but if you have a factory throttle body on there and you have port injection just like you do on a stock manifold, there would be no reason why you can't run the factory ECU. You just have to tune it. 98 Dodge 360 V8. I had an EFI Hughes air gap on a 98 360 52 millimeter throttle body. It couldn't get above torque converter stall on a hill with 4,000 pounds behind it. I would recommend keeping the KEGGER if you tow. What do you mean that it couldn't get above torque converter stall? I guess I could read spark plugs or use infrared thermometer. F&B has a 6-back TBI intake. Yeah, that would be cool. I've seen where guys modify the KEGGERs by cutting them and putting a plate on them and that kind of stuff. And that's kind of neat. Then you put a bunch of the stock throttle bodies on there. Red line, then you can definitely do sequential injection as long as you have a cam and a crank sensor. You could do sequential injection, and then you could, the way that the low buck way to do that, to do individual cylinder trims to test and see if you need that, is you do weld bungs on every, if it's, you have long tube headers, you weld it on every primary and you just cap those. And then you take one sensor and you do a bunch of tests with one sensor. You just move it from one hole to the other and you just look at it and go, oh, well, this cylinder is rich and this cylinder is lean and all that. And these are the ones I have to adjust. You don't have to run 802s all at the same time. I mean, it's preferred. And that's the way that it's usually done by people that are testing on the engine dyno. But you could do it out on the street by yourself as long as you know how to then go in and do individual cylinder trims. That's why I only cut about an inch off of one side of the runners on the KEGGER. Still has good low end torque, but breathes a little better at RPM. Yeah, I don't understand the comment about can't get past the torque converter stall. How's our poll doing? Would the smaller 318 Magnum respond differently to boost than the larger 360? We're split at 50-50 with all the live feed folks here. Come on now. Maybe there's confusion in the question. Charles went all out on a set of Chinese replacement Magnum heads. So there's still, Graham, there's still iron heads, right? A single plane intake ended up flowing 276 through the carb intake and head. So you had the, when they flowed it, they had the intake manifold attached to it. Should make good power. Yeah, that's going to be much more than a stock setup does. Is it a trick question? No, I think there's probably confusion in the question. I think that people think that the 318 would be different only because the NA power is going to be different. And so therefore they think, well, yeah, it's going to be different starting off. So it's going to be different, you know, with boost. My question is really just, do they act the same? Like if we add 7.5 pounds of boost, are they both going to increase the power output by 50%? And the answer is yes, it will. It will. They will both do the same thing. No confusion, just artificial card, guys. Everything bolted together. 3.0 pulley for now. Only one revision as of now. Haven't been above 4,500. Dealing with misfire. 350 at the tire would be with a 3.0 pulley. That might be a big ask. And does it have a big throttle body on it? I hope. Just elevates the NA curve. Yeah, that's what it does. It's the same curve. In fact, just leave the curve there. Just don't do anything to the curve. Don't draw another one on top of it. All you have to do is go over to where it says the power levels and just slide all those down. And it's the same thing. Curve's exactly the same, just higher numbers. It's fun when you do that. I've done that a few times on the LS stuff, particularly when we run, you know, stock cams, but really any kind of cam does it, because, you know, every cam. Scott, what's going on? Talking about Magnums. In terms of power output and reliability, how would you compare a 360 to a 350 Vortec after a basic cam swap? It looks to me like, let's see, where are we at on the Magnum? It looks to me like the 360 Magnum, well, I can't say that. I don't know if that's the case. I haven't ever run a Vortec 350 with the factory EFI setup, so I don't know how it compares. When we run well, listen, never mind, this one has a cam in it too, but I thought that we ran a stock cam on this thing too. In fact, I'm sure that we did. Yeah, so this was 300. Okay, so this was my junkyard 360 Magnum, stock long block, UT Awesome. Oh, so this had the KEGGER intake manifold. So this is around 300 horsepower. So with the KEGGER would be a little bit less than that. I'm thinking that makes comparable power to at least the carbureted versions of the Vortec 350 that we've run. I haven't run one with a factory intake manifold, so I don't know how that compares to a dual plane. Found a glitch in my ECU map on overrun temp versus timing. Fixed, no stalls. 2 cells were zeroed out between 30cc and 50cc. L8. May have been the cat. You think the 83-pound injectors you have on your website will be enough to feed 700 to 800 wheel horsepower on 85? Well, we have 83s. We also have 1,000 cc's, and that's what I would get for that. First day for full workforce. Ready to go back into holiday mode. I know it was hard getting up early. So my wife's been off too, so that we got to sleep in. It was nice. When I say sleep in, I don't mean until noon or 1. 2.6 when I hope to get to 350. Yeah, I was going to say it's going to take some pulley to get up there. Okay, with hit converter stall, 1600 RPM, and stay there and only hit 50 miles an hour, so it couldn't accelerate beyond that until the hill would level out and then would take off. I don't understand how it would not. That seems like a tuning problem or something. I was going to put a nice looking fabricated Holley manifold on my 6.1, then I realized it isn't worth the torque loss. Those barrel intakes are king for street use. On your 6.1 Hemi, is that what you're talking about? So you're going to keep the SRT8 intake manifold? You were moving already. It was fine. Pulled 11,000 pounds one time. Just could not get rolling up a hill from the start. Okay. That seems odd. Visited friends over the weekend. They were doing a 5-3 swap on a 99 quad 4x4. 75 LS1 AccuFab. Okay. There's a North Star on there. All right. And did you redo the entry on it too? Did you do any porting on the entry? Test the Kenny Bell that was on the Shelby Durango. Oh, you said you want me to test that? Can you tune a stock LS to produce more power with just a tune? Yes, a factory tune is not optimized for power production. You can make more. That's how tuners are able to do that. You just add timing and you take away it and you lean it out and add more timing. And then it will make more power than the factory does, because the factory doesn't put all of that in there. You can tune it to run on 93 or even better, run on E85. Okay, because supposedly my Denali has a tune, but no aftermarket mods. Yes, you can. That's why guys buy those handheld programmers, because you can put different tunes in them. When you run your thing at wide open throttle, and it has, particularly if you're running, you know, because it has to be able to run on 87 octane, which a lot of guys do. And so at 87 octane, the detonation threshold is much lower than it is on 93 octane or even 91. And so you have 87 timing in it. I got 44-pound injectors in my Magnum, and it is running a 100-gallon-per-hour fuel pump. Would that pump sufficiently support 100% duty cycle on those injectors? It's on pump gas. I'd have to do the conversion for gallons and weight and power, but I think, let's see here. Okay, here we go. Fuel pump calculator. You know, the new couch looks nice. Oh, thanks. Is it comfy? Yeah, it's good. The dogs like it. Yeah. Yeah, they do. So that's half of it. $1,000. Okay, so 100 gallons an hour is going to be 300, and let's see. Okay, it's going to be 378 liters per hour. That's a good size pump. That's better than a, let's say, a Hemi pump or Hemi Plus pump like we have. Yeah, and 44-pound injectors that pump will support those. On pump gas 93, hoping for 500 wheel horsepower. Yeah, all of that stuff is way past that. 44s will support a bunch. Forty 44s will support 700 or so NA, so you're good. Is your valve spring tool available for purchase yet? No, we're still waiting on getting it. I'll have to find out from Jimmy when it's available. It's going to be this month. More timing or more fuel. That's right. It will need a small 2.5 to 2.7 to make 350 plus 3.0s. Going to get, yeah, you're going to drive around with that. That makes sense. And when you're dyno testing, you always start with that. start with, like, I like to start with the biggest pulley, so the lowest amount of boost. Like, that's why we have a 3/8. So we start with that and then go, okay, that's doing that what it's supposed to do. Everything looks to be happy, and then we start going down. Like, I have a 3/8 and a 3/0 and a 2/6, I think. What's on the upcoming test list? I've got a 400 that I'm putting together. 400 small block. I got to do some testing, some 6-liter testing with both of the cams, the low buck truck camshaft and the truck plus camshaft. We want to run some turbos that we have coming. Someone has to ask an important question. So with all this cold weather happening, are you for warming up your car before driving, or just start it off and go? It's better for it if you warm it up, or if you start it and just let it sit there for a second and then start driving it. Just start driving it easy. Don't go out and stomp on it. I have way more mechanical empathy than that. Mine is a 6.0, no E85, but the guy said he tuned it and it did some pulls yesterday and it moved pretty good. Okay. The SCT tuner for Magnums worked great. Wife has a 91 tune. Alex, does it tell you what the timing is on that? When you do that tune, does it say, hey, look, this thing runs 28 degrees or whatever? Staying, there's no dumb questions. Can I set gap on new rings in stock before I hone it? It won't change the gap noticeably, I don't think. Yeah, when you're honing it, you're not going to really take out much material. Hemifest is the name of the tuner. 6.0 and a Denali is pretty good. The best way to get more power would be a camshaft and long tubes. Yeah, 6.0 with the low buck truck camshaft and the springs, you'd be set. We need Flying Ryan Hogan tune. Swapping headers on the 351. Heads cam intake Vortec Fox body. 1 3/4 long tubes versus inch and 5/8. He hopes to gain 20 wheel horsepower. That's not going to happen. What's the tune I keep humming? I don't know what that is. It just keeps coming in every time I get on. Yeah, JPL, let me know what happens. 20 wheel horsepower from a header change from inch and 5/8 to inch and 3/4. I've never seen anything like that. Get a 6.0 LS stock throttle body intake, 18 pounds of boost. How can I tell if bigger throttle body would help? It won't. Do you have a camshaft in that too? The way that you could measure it is you could run pressure taps before the throttle body and after the throttle body, like in the intake manifold, and see what's happening. If there's 20 pounds of boost before the throttle body and only 18 after the throttle body, then you have restriction. But when you see 20 pounds of boost before it and 20 pounds of boost after it, that means that there isn't a restriction. 318 will more power than it had before. Let it run at least a minute to get fluids moving. Be gentle for the first minute, for the first couple minutes. Did I mention rotary testing recently? We did talk about that earlier, that somebody said that they'd like to see that, and I said I'd like to see that too. Unfortunately, I don't have any rotary motors. What the poll does not show is how 318 has a stronger piston than the 360. I hit my junk 318 Magnum with 22 pounds from a GT45, a 7875 Gen 2.5. I have it now, makes more power. Yeah, but that's not really the question. Wasn't which one of them has stronger pistons. And why does the 318 have stronger pistons? What did they do? Does it have more crown on it? Does it have more thickness down to the top ringland? Would Terminator X or Dominator be recommended before doing any upgrades? No, you can make lots of power with a stock ECU and with different tunes. I don't like them and don't use them on the engine dyno because it takes way too long to do tuning that way. How much difference is there between Ford and Chevy pistons Are there any interchangeable? I'd have to go look and see what the compression height is on the Ford and the Chevy. They use different strokes and different rod lengths and stuff. So I don't, and different deck heights on the blocks. So I don't know how much interchangeability there would be. A 4-inch bore Chevy piston and a 4-inch bore Ford piston will both drop into the same 4-inch bore block. But beyond that, I don't know. I haven't done any deep dives on the compression heights of the pistons. And I don't even know if the pins are the same on those. I got 15 minutes. You've seen the Junkyard LS Hardbody D21 on this versus that? No, I haven't seen that. I don't know what a D21 is. Is that a Dodge something or other? The Terminator X is much more user-friendly. Hard to explain. It was like any inertia the motor had while getting to the converter. Stop, stall. No amount of throttle would get it to accelerate. Beyond that, I would like to see what's going on with the air fuel when that's happening, because there's no way that it's making so much less torque than that. That definitely is a tune problem. It's not a power production problem with the intake manifold. My guess is that it's either way too rich or way too lean when you're trying to do what you're talking about. My guess is it would be lean. But a lot of times you'll get a lean backfire when it gets that bad. I believe if you plugged into a laptop, you may be able to see that stuff. It came with 5 loaded tunes. Okay. 87, 89, 91, 93, 94. We ordered it from Hemi Fever. Had to tell them it was done. What was done to the motor. Okay. What's the matter, baby? What's this? What's going on? Did you say hello to Noah? Did you say hi to everybody? You're famous. You're on Instagram today. You are. Huh. Are you ready for your close-up? D21 Nissan. Okay. Yeah, I don't know what that is. I'd reach out to Rob Dom. I haven't. You see it for sure. Boost the Magnum. What's up with the hard body? Just did head gaskets on one. Are the pistons stronger when you install them backwards or upside down? Upside down would be interesting, right? PSI numbers don't mean much. Horsepower and torque at the crank is really what matters as far as what an engine can handle, regardless of how you get there. I've heard nitrous is harder on stuff. Nitrous is definitely harder on stuff. Some people just buy parts without research. He's a buddy, and I put the Vortec on, so now I'm his mechanic. Yeah, you're married to it. Richard, it has a lower top ring without the depression in it, slightly thicker. And in my scientific hammer test, the you did a hammer test on it, broke before the 318. Yeah, if it has more crown thickness, it would be stronger. That makes sense. I just wonder. I haven't seen those two side by side to see what's going on. We haven't played with the laptop yet, but no, it doesn't specifically say what the timing is. Okay. If they have a bunch of different octane tune ratings, normally that's what it is. This one has stock timing. This one has +1 or +2, and then you just go up in that, because they're just trying to keep it away from detonation with the octane rating. Forgot to say I'm running a sloppy stage 2 cam, 6-liter sloppy stage 2, 18 pounds to boost, stock 4th gen, F body, intake, throttle body. And yes, if you're blowing through the throttle body, you have enough airflow in that throttle body. Hear the dog whistle in the background? Yeah, that's Bruno. I posted a video on Instagram, and then I think I shared it on Facebook, of the 2 dogs wrestling on this giant dog bed that I bought for Lisa so she can lay in front of the fire. And they're arguing wrestling. And I said that they were arguing about which is a better cam, the Lobot truck or the Truck Plus, because dogs do that. My dogs do. Caddy and the Mustang hurt their engines trying to beat the D21. He's like a top gear dog, but super Richie. They are. We could make them famous. They approve of the. I had a very expensive lunch yesterday. I went out to lunch with Lisa, and we went to what's it called? Buckhorn, which is, they're kind of famous. I don't know if they have them all over the United States or whatever, but they're kind of famous for having tri-tip, which is really good. So we went out to lunch, and then she mentioned that we should go look at a couch over at Costco, and we went over there. I'm like, yeah, this is nice. This would be good. And since our couch is 20 years old, I think we've amortized it, and it's time to maybe step up. And we hadn't done that because we always have dogs, and the dogs lay on it and stuff. So we were like, yeah, I don't want to spend $1 million on a new couch. But it was time. And then so we asked the people, because there's a bunch of people buying them, and they were taking them all down in they're in the big boxes. And I'm like, well, how many more of these do you have left? We have one left. Oh, yeah. So we ended up buying a couch. It was such a big couch that I had to leave from Costco, go get my truck, come back with my truck, take half of the couch in my truck over the house, drop that off, go back, get the rest of it, and pick up Lisa. And then, so it was a whole thing. Because I have to fabricate. Hey, Noah, are you out there? I have to fabricate a 3800 GM supercharger to work on other engines. Could it run backwards to use the bottom to adapt for mounting a carb and fabricate the throttle body? I don't know if it will spin backwards. I don't think that the inlet's going to work like that. 360 pistons look quite a bit different. Okay. I know it's not good for it, but my 4.3 revs out higher when engine temp is cold. Would it be an indicator that the valve springs are losing some pressure when warm? I don't know what you mean by revs out. What is stopping it from revving it in one condition versus the other? What are you seeing? Are you seeing that the valves are floating? Like, what's happening? More than likely, at a colder temperature, you have more timing in it, and so it will make more power at that higher engine speed. But once you put either air temperature and definitely water temperature in it, they usually pull timing. I've been 525 horsepower with my mostly stock 318 Magnum on 18 degrees of timing this year. I'm going after it with to see what it'll take. Oh, you mean with boost on it? Personally, I think HPs are easier to tune due to having the option of being able to use smaller fuel and timing tables. You lose resolution. My engine has the KEGGER on it. Okay. Put DSS X pistons in the Magnum. So why do we want to do that, Sean? Have a great day. Yeah, let me know what happens to JPL when you run it. I watch your videos so my dogs know who Richard is. There you go. They can talk to each other. Top Gear and Grand Tour guys, they are car dogs. Those intakes, I cut the divider section, then welded in some aluminum plates to bell mouth the runner entries. Okay, the runners end up about 1 inch shorter, but have larger opening. Okay, so radius entry on those is always good. I've seen some KEGGER mods where they just cut it basically, and they do an angle cut, like a slash cut on it. That opens the opening up, makes it bigger because there's a bigger portion there. But without a radius entry, it's not great. When you test with air gap versus an M1 2 barrel, I don't know if I've run an M1 2 barrel, but the air gap is way better than the M1. We know that that's the case. It's better everywhere. We also still need to see the test with the M90 on the Magnum. Yeah, I don't know how we're going to do that. Is the thicker oil just pushing out of the lifters? Yeah, oil pressure could do something weird with the, if it's affecting lifter bleed down, but I don't know how much temperature you're talking about in the differential there. Honestly thought on a budget factory ECU and HP tuners is a solid option compared to Holley. I just went the Holley route. Yes, Cheesy, the boost is just a multiplier. My bet was yes on the long tubes and the boost at 351. Let's see. You think engine 3/4 is going to make more than engine 5/8 on the 5-liter? 22 PSI from the GT45 the billet. 78, 75 makes the same horsepower, 12 psi. That seems weird to me, unless at 22 pounds you maxed out the GT45. There's something going on there. That's not right. A 10-pound difference is not. That's not how turbos work. Just check the piston out. You'll see. I don't know what that means. My inlet air temps are 287 degrees. Yeah, that's really high. 22 pounds would be a lot. It shouldn't be 287 at 12 pounds though, right? Engine 5/8 shorty headers on the 351. I would be more concerned about them being shorty than I would be about them being engine 5/8. Scott, I thought that the question was engine 5/8 long tubes versus engine 3/4 long tubes. I thought that was the comparison that he was doing. The GT45 was maxed out. I had the gate pin shut, but a GT45 will support more than 700 horsepower. And on a stock 318 or a 360, I don't think you're there yet, right? Well, no, maybe you would be. Maybe that would be maxed out. Yeah, 22 pounds, you should be maxed out. I use the M90 out of the mid-90s Thunderbird Super Coupe. They're easier to adapt to aftermarket situations than the GM ones. Okay. My 2001 Dodge Ram with 5.2 runs propane. Cool. Engine 3/4 long tubes versus engine 5/8 shorties. Yeah, that's a different thing. So I read it wrong. I thought it was engine 5/8 long tubes versus engine 3/4 long tubes. That's why I said he's not going to get 20 wheel horsepower there. And let's see here. I can tell you on my header tests. Let's go to the dyno. Although I don't know if I've done it on a supercharged one. I don't think I have. Not that I can remember. Let's go to this one here. We know that there's something there. Oh, I did do it on a supercharged one. 302. And then long tubes. So long tubes on a stock one were worth 8 horsepower, but a lot of torque down low. 292 versus 317. So a lot of power down low. And then when we did the exhaust test on a supercharged one, we did an exhaust test. Holly blown 302. Here we go. Final stock exhaust. Yeah, the test description here. Yeah, headers on the supercharged one were only worth about 8 or 9 horsepower. This was at the 420 horsepower level. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I use, okay, let's see. Mostly old parts. How much timing did I don't have the data here. Let's see. Maybe I do. Oh, that's on the Ford. I don't know how much, I don't remember how much timing the Magnum wanted. I'm thinking that it was in the 30-degree range or something. But with E85, it should want more than 18 degrees, I would think. Just going up mile an hour. I can hold second gear till 55 when cold, but only 45. What do you mean hold second gear? It stops revving like altogether, like the car shuts off, or what happens? Why won't it keep going in one gear? And are you letting the transmission just shift for itself? Because that could be trans temperature also, and trans pressure. But you build junkyard motor that has all the bits and pieces still attached. Machine clean, etc., or start bare block and do piece by piece. For what are you talking about? For a budget build, we go get a motor from the wrecking yard and put a cam and springs in it and then run it. That's my idea of a budget build. Scottish, I like going to get a complete motor from the wrecking yard, because you'll nickel and dime yourself to death if you have to go buy all the little individual things, sensors and things like that from a dealership. Body language response to some questions makes me laugh. Is it that evident? Can you see why FJ215 standard motor injectors are so much more expensive than stock? What is that? Is that are you talking about a 215 Buick engine, or what is that? There's an FJ215. Is that a Jeep? I don't know what that is. I don't mind being wrong, but much prefer to be correct. Well, we'll see. That's the great thing about the dyno, is that the dyno doesn't care what we want and what we don't want. It just tells us what happened. I'd like to see the guy get 20 more horsepower on the 351. I do too. I think that would be cool. Long tube power, it is real. Mine like 28 to 30 degrees NA, 30 to 34 didn't seem to make a difference. That's kind of where I thought it would be. So 18 on E85 is going to be low. Transparency is real. FJ215 5.9. I say currently, because I move often, I'm leaning toward getting my stroker crank fixed and building an engine. It's manual 5-speed, feels like it's running out of RPM. Feels like valve float. Okay. Here's what I can tell you. I don't know what's going on with your thing, but without being there and experiencing it, or putting some sort of test thing on it. But if you are experiencing valve float, which we have on the engine dyno, when you experience valve float with more temperature in it, valve float comes earlier. Because we can let the thing cool off and it'll run another couple hundred RPM on that run. And then if we run a repeat run, it valve floats earlier. So that is a real thing, but so are other things that are temperature related, like air temperature, trans temperature, oil temperature. All of those things can be affecting it. I think this might be our first. I have to ask Jimmy, but we just got an order. They were shipping to Sweden, because now we're doing international. That's right. RichardHolderPerformance.com goes international. At least for the shipping, anyways. How's our pole doing? Will the smaller 318 Magnum respond differently to the boost than the larger one? 54% are saying no. Okay, so we got like a 2-minute poll that's going to happen here. What the heck is that? What the fizzin' farzin'? I'm going to even use the metric designations. I call them 318s and 360s, but maybe I'm not like part of the cool Magnum crowd. I'm not sure. Would you like to see a 5.2 Magnum tested like the 5.9 Magnum? So do you want to see the little Magnum also tested? Because, you know, short stroke, they love to rev. Are bigger main journals better or worse for performance? The 5.2 has a 2.5 and the 5.9 has a 2.8. Well, with the bigger one, you got more bearing speed, which a lot of guys don't like. International man of mystery. That's right. International man of foolishness. This one's kind of a burn. The state has heavy emissions, but lots of available parts and vehicles. Bobby, what's going on? Texas had amazing car culture, lots of vintage iron laying in fields and behind barns. Does Texas doesn't have the rust problem that other areas have, right? They're fairly dry like Arizona. California is really good about that too. Just want to say I appreciate your work. Thank you, Adam. I differentiate inches for carbs and liters for fuel injected. That's the designation. That's good. That's a good swap. We want all the tests ready for a V8 powered coffee maker. Can we take bets on the number of pulls before the loss of oil pressure? Which one do you think is going to lose oil pressure? One of the Magnums you think is going to lose oil pressure? What type of fuel test are you considering? Well, we want to run, I can run the different octanes for fuel, like we can run 87, but pump gas like 91, which is what we have in California. And then also we could run E85. And I'd like to run methanol. At least those I'd like to try. We have other race gases that we could try. Like we could run some of the oxygenated 100, but I wouldn't be testing it on a motor that really needs that. Or if I did, it'd be good to test it on a naturally aspirated one. Like I'm sure I would use an LS because, you know, RichardHolderPerformance.com has LS stuff. But it probably would do an NA one and then maybe a turbo one. North Texas is wet. Okay. Unless you're on the coast, your car is used as a submarine in Katrina. Cars are generally limited to patina and sun fading. The sun is harsh on it is on my truck. The dash is cracked and stuff, and the paint. Use non-ethanol chainsaw gas. My personal Dodge Ram 1500 5.7 Hemi has 365,000 miles on it. Nice. Your truck was built right. Correct me if I'm wrong. Looking at motors and transmissions on Marketplace, the price is higher. Yeah, because they've gone to get it, and so they're going to make money off of that. A nitro blend, we can also do that. I would like to try that. I think it was around 32 degrees on pump gas. The 85 should go 35, 37. I think you should just try it and see. When we've run NA LS motors on E85, it doesn't really make any more power. And we've tried more timing. We always try another degree or two of timing, but it's just we don't see anything. I think where you would see a gain from E85, just like with water methanol injection, is if you were limited in the amount of timing that the motor and the chamber design wanted, and you weren't giving it that. Like if it wanted 30 and you have to give it 26 or 27 because of detonation issues, and then you're able to give it the 30. Hey, look, we look like a hero. Acura MDX 300,000. Yeah, Scottish, the junkyard motors are the cheapest way to go. You're not going to find a better deal than that. And if you go to the right wrecking yard, a lot of times they have sale weekends, like a lot of them do, and it can be 40 or 50% off. Sometimes you have wrecking yards, like the guys do that here. Any motor in the yard, $200 or whatever. And so the guys come and get them out. So you got to look for that kind of stuff. Will a TBSS lose low torque if swapped to an L33? Yes, I think it loses very low torque, but not a lot compared to the regular truck manifold. But then it's just better. It's enough better that I would pick it over a regular truck intake manifold if I had my choice. Yeah, Scott's right. If you get it from the junkyard, you get all of the stuff with it. You get injectors and coil packs and whatever, and anything else that you could stuff into that motor to hide in there. My 98 S10 has 215,000 miles on it. Nice. 5.2 Magnums have flat top pistons and the 5.9s have dish pistons. That's pretty typical. That's like a 4.8 and a 5.3. Or a 6.0 also has a dish piston, except for the LQ9s have flat tops. And then some of the Recport stuff has flat tops. Scott says, buy a wrecked Chevy Express van. I turned my timing up at the end of last year, but I was having other problems that prevented you from making good passes. Yeah, E85, when we run E85 on stuff, timing's usually in the 20s. It'd be 20 or 21 anyways. Sometimes we spice it up a little bit, but almost all of our stuff is intercooled. Our water temperatures are cold, and the air temperature in the dyno is usually really good. Been able to find headers for my 360 that will fit in my Dakota. I really want long tubes. I don't know if you can. You'd have to buy like a water jetted or laser cut or flange, and then you might be able to bend small block Chevy headers to fit on there. Have you played around with Buick nail heads? I have not. I'd like to see more information on different fuels. Added 110 to my car at the track. I ran super rich and terrible, tuned on 93. But 110 doesn't change the air fuel mixture. Race gas doesn't do that. So I don't know what happened. But race gas doesn't affect that. You're still supplying the same amount of fuel relative to the air. And so the octane doesn't change that. It a lot of times also does, and this is another common fallacy, and one of the reasons why I want to do this, the race gas videos, is that it doesn't change the burn rate either. It can, but octane and burn rate don't go together. And a lot of guys don't understand that. Oh yeah, I put that race gas in. That it's the same argument about like 87 octane and 93 octane. Oh, I put the 93 in, and the 87, the burn rate's a lot better. Well, it may be or may not be, but it has not. That's not in relation to the octane. All it does is stop detonation. Would leaded make a difference? Leaded fuel will definitely make a difference to the life of your oxygen sensor. Bought my Magnum for $150. Nice. Since intakes are RPM specific, I like to see a tunnel ram on a stock small block Chevy long block. You want to run a tunnel ram just on a stock cammed motor, like stock cam, stock head motor? I have lots of small block Chevy tunnel ram tests that we run. You can feel the difference in a 250 Ninja. Feel the difference of what? Of octane? Then you were octane limited before, right? While Le Mans has a 400 Pontiac, nice. It's slow compared to even a modern pickup truck. Talk me into keeping it all poncho rather than just dropping an LQ4. A 400-inch Pontiac could definitely make power. I mean, it's really easy to make lots of torque with that. So you just need a set of, there's aluminum heads out there for those. Just put aluminum heads, put a cam in it, and a dual plane intake manifold. You'll be just roasting the tires left and right. And if you have a Pontiac and you lift the hood, there's more wow factor for that. Will Q16 pick up noticeable power on a 450 horsepower dipole? No, not. I mean, you'll be able to register it sometimes because usually it's a percentage. So on a lower horsepower, if it's a strict percentage, the lower horsepower gains less than like an 800 horsepower one does. You'll see something, but it's not a lot. People argue aviation fuel. Yeah, and I would argue that the octane of the aviation fuel is not what's making a big change from, I mean, it helps with detonation suppression, but there are other things in aviation fuel that are going to change how it performs. Have you tried swapping to an E85 carb from gas on NA to see if there are gains? I don't think I've run an E85 carburetor. We have switched from E85 to, from gas to E85 on fuel injected stuff. I would expect less of a gain from that because we're already getting lots and lots of charge cooling on a carbureted application going into the inlet of the manifold. I don't know how much more we get from that, but I haven't tried it. They recommend 87 on the Ninja 250. Isn't that motor a high compression motor? Happy New Year, everyone. Love to see more Magnum testing. Do you guys use a knock monitor during the dyno runs? We don't. What we do is like if we run a typical NALS motor, we run it up till it stops making power. But we run it cold enough, both water and air, that we don't get into detonation. We get to the point where it stops making power before we get into detonation. The 85 can make less horsepower cars because you display so much air. That's a good point, Adrian. Is that can definitely happen. It depending on how big the carburetor is and whether that's becomes flow limited. But you definitely displace it all through the intake manifold too. What about a 6.1 Hemi? What about that? Statistically, well, so static, it's 11 to 1, right? But it probably has lots of camshaft in it, right? Is it? How high does that thing rev? I don't understand why a motorcycle wouldn't want any motorcycle engine, given the given the state of tune that they're at. I don't understand why it wouldn't want like higher octane fuel. None of the bikes that I ever rode recommended them. My 302 ran noticeably better on 87 than it did on 89 or 93. I don't know why that would be the case. Jay, what do you mean? How much power do you think it could take? I've done Hemi big bang stuff. So if you put ring gap in a Hemi and have the tune right and put a turbo on it, we've made over 1,000 horsepower with them. So our poll is, would you like to see a 5.2 Magnum tested? 93%. We're in our poll and we have 1 minute left. What does somebody have out there? My dog grabbed something from somewhere. So he was coming to tell me, hey, you've been on for too long, and I just want to let you know that I'm going to start going and looking around for stuff that I can chew on. So just a heads up. Doggies. Hey, what's this? Yeah, that's right. See that? Come here. I know. You know. Okay, let me bite your arm, okay? This is how I tell you that I love you, huh? Chew on that arm. You get that arm. You get that. I know. Okay, there you go. Here, let me chew on your arm. Chew on my arm. Doggies, they're awesome. That makes sense about a knock monitor Pro V4 from Tuner Nerd. I'm not sure where the best place to mount in the block would be. That's 2 knock sensors. Knock detection is important for tuning the sensor to your knock frequencies, and it takes a lot. I mean, it takes a lot. That's a big part of what the OEMs do. That takes a long time for them to get the tuning specific on those. The worst part of working construction is working around other trades. What are your thoughts on adding a spacer plate between the intake manifold and head? On what application is this? But thank you. I'll be most sad if Dodd doesn't add a double overhead cam. An L86. So why do you want to put a spacer between a composite intake manifold and an aluminum head? So what do you think that it's going to do? Are you trying to add runner length to it? Because an L86 already has a really good long runner intake manifold. And I don't remember if the L86 or the L84, what does one of them have a dual runner intake manifold? I know the Hemis had that. But you're not going to heat isolate a composite intake manifold because you're not getting most of the heat transferred from the aluminum head into the composite manifold. You're getting radiant heat from the engine compartment. So, and also, I would argue that particularly at wide open throttle, you're not transferring a bunch of heat from that manifold into the intake charge temperature anyways. I have a Pro Charger. I'm curious if adding runner length will get some mid-range torque back. No, you will not be able to add enough to make that happen. With that factory intake manifold, you should have all of the, you're going to have all of the mid-range that you can have. You just feel like it has way more because you have a rising boost curve. Is there a limit to how long of a runner can be before it hurts? Yeah, the runner length is like anything else. The runner length is optimum for a given RPM range. And once you go beyond that, whether too long or too short, you do what camshafts do, is you just start trading power at the ends of the curves. You should start a build for the channel. A build of what? I have thousands of engines that we've tested on the channel. Already hunting junkyards for a 6.0 and a 4L80. I am going to be putting together or refurbishing, let's say. I have the, I don't think it's an LC9, I think it's an LH6. I'm putting that together, it has forged pistons in it. And we're also doing forged stuff on the 5.3 L33 engine because that's going in the Mustang. VR test says 6.1 Hemi. Yes, I have 6.1 Hemi stuff up on the channel. I have a 2006 5.7 that I've stroked out to 6.6 fully forged internals and a 6.1. Yes, I wrote a book on Hemi stuff. In fact, do I have it here? Yeah. Is this it? Yes. See? New Hemis. Richard Holden. Lots of 5.7 and 6.1 testing on that. And strokers and turbos and nitrous and blowers, all that. So if you want a copy of this, send me an email. I think that they're like $20 or something. I got a stock 5.9 Magnum and an old E-body. I'm running the old Mopar Performance 4-barrel dual plane. Are you familiar with this intake? I don't know if I've seen the dual plane. I've seen the Mopar Performance single plane. I believe this intake is a little too small if I ever upgrade. I would be surprised if it's too small. If it's a factory or it's an aftermarket dual plane, I think that they would have made it feed at least 400 horsepower. One build I would like to see is how much horsepower you can make from a 5.3 using all OEM parts from other engines that would fit the 5.3. So, well, that's already up. So we have it would be an L33, which would be a 5.3. That would be the most highest horsepower 5.3. And the only thing you could do would be to put a Trailblazer SS intake manifold on it. And then the best cam that you could put in there would be an LS7 or an LS9 cam. And so you're talking about low 400 horsepower kind of thing. And by the way, it'd be way more expensive and way harder to do something like that because you'll never find that stuff in a wrecking yard. It'd be way less expensive just to buy a cam like my low buck truck camshaft, and it'll make more power than any of the factory stuff. How does engine temp affect power? I have that video up. We did power with different air temp or different water temps, so that's up there. OEMs run higher temp for more complete burn. They run higher temps for emissions and not for power. You get better fuel mileage under cruise at higher water and air temps. What you want, and you make more power with higher oil temperature, but higher oil temp and colder water temp and colder air temp make the most power. It's hard to do. We can do it on the dyno because we have the ability to circulate water through it and make sure that that's cold. We do a bunch of hot runs on it, get the oil temperature up, circulate water really quickly, bring the cylinder head temperature and the intake temperature down, make another hero run. Look at that, all the power in the world. 1997 3.9 Magnum, slightly modified. Throttle body spacer, any benefits? I don't know that a spacer would do anything because the spacer under the throttle body doesn't add runner length like it would do to help an intake manifold. But I would be interested in a test to see if it does that. Richard, it's cold. Yeah. Richard, YouTube creator, automotive enthusiast, race car driver, builder, dyno dude, and hairstylist to the stars, as long as they don't have any hair. More Yul Brynner and Patrick Stewart, all the cool guys. Overbuilt, you come here, man, we'll help you out. Bruno and Brady will say hello. And 500 CFM Holly 2-barrel on a KEGGER intake manifold. I'd be interested to see that. That would be the kind of weirdo kind of test that I would like to do, because you'd get charge cooling from that, and I would think that the 500 is enough to support the power level that those things are at, because we're talking about 300 horsepower. Jay Andrade, my goal is 1,000 horsepower. Okay, I'm gonna scroll back and see if I saw another comment from you, but yeah, that's not hard. A 6.1 already has good heads on it. You just put a cam and springs in it, put ring gap in it, and a turbo, and it will do 1,000 horsepower. I think I was trying to do that, and I was going racing. I think that I would put forged pistons and rods in it, but otherwise it's really easy. I mean, the 6.1 made a bunch of power even stock, and that's a good intake manifold. It's softer down low than the composite 5.7 Hemi. I call them the Magnum intake manifolds after the car. It makes less power down low than that one does, but more power at the top. Turbo stuff, like I said, the 6.1 heads are good. You don't need to do anything to any of the Hemi heads to make 1,000 horsepower. Even the lowest flowing head, which would be an early 5.7 head, easy to make 1,000 horsepower. Would forged pistons be a necessity in a tow vehicle? I think the rings would give up either way if the tune was too aggressive. Oh, on a turbo tow vehicle, yes, I would do rings. I would do ring gap at the very least. And then forged pistons wouldn't be a bad idea. There's lots of guys that have, like, if you look at Mike Davis and his 8.1, those are not forged pistons. He's got 600 and something thousand miles on it. He tows it, drives it every day. It's a turbo 8.1. And so if you have ring gap in it and you have the tune correct, you can get away with a lot of stuff, because none of that is overloading the strength of the piston. 1,500 on a stock K24 block is possible. Funny how Kyle can't keep his billet blocks running, but the darn stock block emergency engine has pulled all the weight. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I just have seen some of the things that they've done, but I don't know about strength tests between the two kinds of blocks he's using. I don't know that what he's doing is a direct analysis of that. Because when you blow something up, you don't know that it's just a function of the block strength, or if it was some other thing. There. He's got forged internals. So I build, I'm aiming for 700, 800 wheel horsepower. I'm sure you can get that under 15 pounds on a GT45. No, you're not going to get 800 wheel horsepower from a GT45 at any boost level. You need a bigger turbo for that, for 800 wheel horsepower. You have to go to a 78, 75 Gen 2, or I don't know when you're doing this, but we'll have turbos that will be able to do that before too long here, in the next month or so. But you need a bigger turbo for that. If you want to run 25 pounds, you need an even bigger turbo. Richard, got an old boat, need motor. It's a 97 Glass Sun speed run, 18 feet, had a 305. What should I put in at 5.3 aluminum or 2JZ or an Atlas? I think is it a boat that you're going to be taking your family out in skiing, or are you just going to go out and make speed runs in it? What are you doing to it? And what kind of drive does it have? Is the outdrive going to be a problem? Is it going to break that if you put too much power in it? For boats, I err way even more so than like my stock truck toward reliability, because I don't want to be paddling a boat back to the dock. I'll be restoring the boat. Cool. If it had a 305 and you could just put a 350 in it that makes an aluminum headed 350 that makes another 100 horsepower, that's probably the easiest way to go. Two GT45s, twins. Yeah, if you want 1500 horsepower with a turbo, you can do that. Or what I would do are twin smaller turbos. It just depends on your desired power output. Wizard, what's going on? Yeah, Jimmy's getting your stuff out. Wizard was a big winner. Scott's answered everything. Just start with an 88 millimeter turbo right to begin with. Just go big all the way. On that note, it is time to go. Thank you guys all for showing up. I'll be back tonight with, more fun and frivolity. That's right.